Dispatched to Unit 4. Forensics just flagged an anomaly at the Everett crime scene. ID was recovered from under the body. Matches a deceased male. Repeat. Subject was officially declared dead in 2003. Requesting immediate verification.
The call came in at 3:46 a.m., just as the fog began rolling thick over the outer blocks of Everett. Detective Miles Kenner was already awake, pouring stale coffee into a cup that still smelled faintly of gun oil and resignation. He didn't need to check the address. He knew the warehouse by heart. It had been vacant for years. Burnt brick, steel beams, a carcass of a place swallowed slowly by weeds and memory. But tonight, someone had turned it into a crime scene. He arrived to find the body already bagged. Young man, gunshot to the chest, no signs of forced entry, no shell casing. No ID on the victim, but a wallet found underneath a crate, partially tucked into the wooden frame, worn and water damaged. It had been preserved just enough to be readable. Kenner took it from the officer's gloved hands. License name, Isaac Marin, issued June 2002. Status, active, color photo, age, 42. He stared at the face. It looked too familiar, not from recent cases, from something older. When he returned to the precinct, he searched the archives. And there it was. Case file, 483D. Name, Isaac Marin. Status, deceased, March 11, 2003. Cause of death, vehicular crash, full body incineration, remains identified. By dental records. Kenner felt the coffee in his stomach begin to churn. There were photos, charred wreckage, body bag sealed, closed casket funeral, all confirmed. But now, 2 decades later, his license had just been recovered at a fresh homicide site, barely a mile from where he supposedly died. He pulled the ME's preliminary report. The victim was roughly 25. No prints, no prior record. But the blood on the wallet matched the victim's own. No signs of another person having touched it recently. Kenner sat in the silence of the evidence room, staring at the old photo of Isaac. His jaw clenched at the familiar set of the man's eyes. It had been years, but he remembered that face. It wasn't from the case files, it was from the mirror. For a moment he saw himself, not older, not changed, just split. He pulled the original crash report. The officer on scene in 2003 had written something odd in the margins. Driver's seat empty upon first approach, fire too advanced for retrieval. Yet somehow, they had confirmed identity through dental, granting closure. He went to the archives and pulled the physical file. In the back, beneath the autopsy scans, was an envelope he hadn't remembered seeing before. No label. Unsealed. Inside, one Polaroid, a photo of Isaac Marin standing outside the very warehouse where the new body was found. Time-stamped, February 18, 2003. 3 weeks after his official death, Kenner stood up abruptly. Something was wrong. Something was looping. He ran the facial recognition algorithm on the warehouse victim. The image returned 89% similarity to Isaac's known profile. A high match for a relative, but Isaac had no siblings, no children, no immediate family according to the official record. Yet the blood type matched. The ME called. He hesitated before speaking, his voice low and unsure. We ran a second sweep of the body's dental records. There's something weird. The victim has a molar with a filling method discontinued in 1996. Kenner froze. That type of filling, it matched the dental file used to identify Isaac in 2003. How old would someone be to have that dental work? Minimum age? Late. 40s. But the body is barely 25. It doesn't add up. No, it didn't. Kenner opened the precinct camera logs again, pulling the footage from earlier that morning. One frame outside the evidence room caught his attention. At 3:12 a.m., a man stood at the far end of the hallway. Still, head down, posture rigid. For 13 seconds, he didn't move. Then, frame by frame, he turned, and it was him. Isaac. Same eyes, same coat as in the Polaroid, no timestamp glitch. No digital error, just presence. He vanished before the next motion trigger activated. Kenner went cold. He accessed the original crime scene photo from 2003. The crash, the charred wreck. And something caught his eye for the first time. A rearview mirror, hanging crooked. And in it, a face. Unburned. Staring back. Not distorted by flame. Captured clean. Detective Kenner didn't sleep that night. The face in the rearview mirror from the 2003 crash photo kept staring at him, intact, composed, unburned, while the rest of the car was consumed by flame. He played the image on loop in his mind, trying to tell himself it was a reflection error, a trick of light, a late-night delusion. But it wasn't. The timestamp, the photo quality, the integrity of the evidence, it all held up. Which meant the reflection was real, and it looked exactly like the man whose ID was found at the crime scene 20 years later. By 6 a.m., Kenner was back at his desk, sifting through every record tied to Isaac Marin. He started with the basics: birth certificate, education, employment. Everything looked standard. Too standard. No deviations, no medical history, no voting records, no digital traces past 2002. It was as if Marin simply shut off from the world a year before his supposed death. He called in a request to vital statistics for any prior aliases or alternate identities linked to the social security number. The Batamira system flagged a record with a red overlay. Restricted, clearance level 4 required. That wasn't typical. Not for civilians, not for insurance adjusters like Isaac Marin claimed to be. Kenner typed faster. He rerouted through an old channel. Used during his internal affairs days, technically unauthorized, but functional. What he found was a shadow registry. A file labeled Project Echo, Subject 117B, Marin Protocol. The summary was brief, but it was enough to shatter what little was left of the known narrative. Marin wasn't just a man, he was part of an experiment, a behavioral mirror initiative launched under a joint task between a defense contractor and a neurological research division. Objective: to embed altered identity matrices into host subjects, test if false lives could be built from synthetic memory scaffolding. In theory, if trauma could be fabricated and belief embedded, entire personas could be written into existence. Subject 117B was Isaac Marin. He wasn't born. He was written. Kenner leaned back from the screen. The original case hadn't been just a car accident. It was a controlled termination, and now, someone had reactivated the protocol. The question was, why? He printed the redacted report and went straight to Dr. Eloise Hartman, a behavioral psychologist who had consulted with the Department of Justice in memory reform programs. She was reluctant at first, but once he showed her the documents, her expression turned grave. "I thought this program was shut down in 2001, she said. They were experimenting with artificial trauma insertion. They wanted to see if you could create real PTSD using memories that never happened." Kenner nodded. "Can you?" She paused. "The brain doesn't distinguish well between reality and repetition. If you make someone believe they've lived through horror, especially if it's reinforced through narrative, then yes, you can break someone. Or build someone. Build someone like Marin, or someone who thinks they're Marin." That phrase sat like ice in Kenner's chest. If the man found at the warehouse wasn't Isaac, then he was someone carrying Isaac's script. But how did you write a ghost? Kenner returned to the precinct just in time for the lab results. There had been a second trace of blood found beneath the wallet at the scene, too faint for quick analysis. It wasn't from the victim. The match came back after a full genome alignment. The second sample matched Detective Miles Kenner, his own DNA, underneath a wallet belonging to a man who supposedly died 20 years ago. He sat in his car, parked in the lowest level of the precinct garage, letting the silence build. He remembered something he hadn't thought about in years, a night in 2003. A call to an abandoned warehouse. A car fire already dying. The heat in the air. The distant scream. Or maybe it was a whisper. And a name. Not shouted, but written. Scrawled into the ash on the concrete. Marin. He hadn't filed it. Not officially. There was no record, because he hadn't been assigned to the case. He was off duty that night. He wasn't supposed to be there. But he had been. And now, 20 years later, his blood was at the new scene. Kenner pulled out his old journals, personal notes, pages from the months after that night. Most were cryptic, fragmented, drawings, phrases. One page stood out, just 5 words, written over and over in dark ink. I didn't mean to watch. And one photo clipped to the back of the journal, a Polaroid he didn't remember taking. 2 figures standing by the warehouse. One was Isaac, the other was him. Same jacket, same badge, same look. But the timestamp said February 28th, 2003. He didn't join the force until April of that year, so who had worn his face that night, and who was wearing it now? Detective Kenner didn't return home. Something inside him warned that if he stepped through his apartment door, the reflection in his hallway mirror might not be his. So he drove. Nowhere in particular. Just long stretches of highway with no music, no sound. Only the buzzing question drilling into his skull. Who started this loop? By morning, he found himself outside the old Glenridge Psychiatric Institute. Officially shut down since 2010, the building stood hollow and overgrown, surrounded by rusting fences and boards nailed like regrets to every window. But one thing stood out. A side entrance with a fresh padlock, government-issued. Kenner picked it, a habit he hadn't used in years. The door creaked open like an inhale before confession. Inside, the air was colder than outside. Dry, still. He walked past abandoned gurneys and therapy chairs, some still facing one another like ghosts mid-conversation. The files he was looking for weren't likely stored openly. Not if this place was used for Marin protocols. He searched the lower level, eventually finding a records room sealed behind a steel hatch. Someone had clearly tried to torch the contents. But the flames didn't finish the job. Amongst the charred debris, Kenner found a metal case with a rusted biometric lock. It didn't ask for a code. It asked for a fingerprint. He pressed his thumb against it, mostly out of defiance. It clicked open. Inside were reel tapes, old, labeled not by name, but by dates. One was marked 03/11/2003, 04:09 a.m., the exact time of Isaac Marin's official death. He found an old projector, powered it using a generator in the service room, and began to play the reel. What he saw collapsed something inside him. A room. Gray walls, a bed, one man sitting, strapped in, face half lit. Isaac Marin, not burned, not panicked, calm. A voice asked questions off camera. Do you remember your name? I am the echo. Do you remember the crash? That wasn't me. That was the shell. And who are you? I am the memory that survived. Kenner watched in stunned silence as the figure began to describe people he shouldn't know. Locations, events from Kenner's own childhood, with precision. A birthday party in 2nd grade, the red balloon, the song his mother hummed when he had the flu in '89. How do you know that? The interviewer demanded. Because someone needed to forget, so I held it for them. The footage cut out. Kenner sat in the dark. Cold sweat soaked through his shirt. He'd never met Isaac Marin. He was sure of that. And yet, Marin knew him. Not in theory, not from a case file, from inside. He drove back to the precinct, bypassed protocol and scanned. His own personnel file, not the visible one, but the deep administrative metadata. There it was, flagged entry, identity sync. Confirmed. 03-2003. Under program code, Echo, 1-17B, he stared. According to the metadata, his profile had been initialized in April 2003, 2 weeks after Isaac Merrin's crash. He had no entries. Before that, no training logs, no probation period, no academy footage. Just presence. Like he had always been there, but he hadn't. Had he? He went to Internal Affairs, asked for a full audit trail. They resisted, citing clearance. He leaned in. Whispered the code, 117B. They went pale. Minutes later, a flash drive was handed over without a word. Inside, footage from his earliest years on the force. Locker room surveillance, training exercises. He watched himself laughing, talking, living. But, in every single clip, when someone touched his shoulder or passed behind him, they shivered, and not once did his reflection appear on the security mirror facing the lockers. It was just glass, empty. Kenner slammed his laptop shut. If his reflection wasn't present, who had they trained? Who had they certified? His phone vibrated. Unknown number. Text message. Warehouse. Tonight. Alone. You'll remember what they erased. No. Sender. No callback. He didn't respond. He didn't need to. He knew where the warehouse was. He always had, because that night in 2003, the one he thought he dreamed, had never stopped happening, and tonight, it would finish what it started. The warehouse hadn't changed in 20 years. The walls still bore the same fire scars, and the floor retained the dark shadow where the flames had once kissed concrete. It wasn't just a crime scene anymore. It was a wound, a place that refused to heal. Detective Kenner stood in the entrance, his flashlight trembling slightly in his grip, not from fear, but from recognition. He didn't remember walking here before, but his body did. Every step forward echoed like déjà vu. He followed the path the forensics had flagged days earlier, left through the old supply corridor, past the collapsed shelving, and toward the back wall, where the crate had been found, the one hiding Isaac Merrin's ID. Kenner knelt beside the splintered wood. The place where they had recovered the wallet still looked undisturbed, but now, something new was there. A second ID, same photo, same name, but with his birth date. Kenner turned it over. A message was scratched faintly into the plastic under the lamination. You're not the memory. You're the frame. He staggered backward, heart pounding. There was a sound above him, movement in the rafters. He pointed the flashlight up, catching a brief silhouette darting into shadow. He drew his weapon, but didn't fire. Something told him the person above wasn't there to attack him. They were leading him. He climbed the old stairs, each one groaning under his weight, until he reached the top platform. The air changed, heavy, pressurized, like walking through grief. And there, standing at the edge, was a man. Same face, same height, same eyes, but not quite him. Isaac, not burned, not aged, alive. Kenner raised his weapon. Who are you? The man didn't flinch. You already know. I buried you. No, he replied calmly. You buried what was left of me, but I was never supposed to survive the overwrite. Kenner's grip faltered. What overwrite? Isaac stepped forward, eyes never leaving his. The Merrin protocol wasn't meant to erase people. It was designed to transfer the burden, every trauma, every secret, every act of violence they wanted off the books. They embedded it in synthetic minds. They made echoes, carriers. Kenner's throat dried. You're saying I'm not... You're real, Isaac said. But your life was grafted. You were given my weight so I could disappear. Kenner took a step back. I remember my mother, my childhood. You remember mine. No. It's why your memories don't have sound. Why you never dream in first person. Why mirrors feel wrong. Because those moments were never yours. Kenner fell silent. A flood of thoughts tried to rise. but none felt anchored. His past unraveled like a film strip melting under heat. He remembered a playground, then remembered watching it from across the street. He remembered a fire, but only from outside the smoke. He remembered a name whispered in the dark, Merrin, and waking up choking. He lowered the weapon. Why tell me now? Isaac walked to the window, looking out into the empty street. Because I've been reactivated too, and soon they'll come to decommission us both. Who? The ones who built us, the division.
You didn't think this ended in 2003, did you? Kenner approached the edge slowly. Why was your ID left under that crate? I left it, Isaac replied, to trigger the protocol, to make you remember. But why now? Isaac turned.
Because they started using your frame again, your architecture. There's another version of you walking into people's lives, absorbing guilt, carrying memories no one wants. Kenner's breath caught, like a psychic landfill. Yes, Isaac whispered. And I've seen what happens when it reaches capacity. Kenner's mind reeled. How do we stop it? You don't, Isaac said. He held up a photo. The same Polaroid Kenner had found in his journal. The one of the two of them by the warehouse, time-stamped weeks after Isaac's supposed death. There's a loop, Isaac said. We're inside it, the only way to end it. He didn't finish the sentence, because at that moment, a red dot appeared on his forehead. Kenner's instincts kicked in. He grabbed Isaac, pulling him down just as a bullet shattered the window, embedding itself in the far wall. Sniper. Kenner fired blindly out the window before dragging Isaac down the stairs. Another shot hit the railing inches from his leg. As they reached the bottom, Isaac clutched his side, bleeding, but not fatally. Kenner dragged him behind the old generator unit. Who the hell is shooting at us? Isaac coughed, smiling grimly. The cleanup crew. Kenner checked his weapon. 2 bullets left. Isaac leaned closer. We're not supposed to survive this scene. Then, let's ruin the script. Kenner's ears rang from the blast. Dust rained from the warehouse rafters, mixing with the heat of panic in his blood. Isaac's breathing was shallow beside him, but he was conscious. The sniper had stopped firing. Too much movement, no clear shot. That bought them time. Not much, but enough to rewrite what was meant to be their last scene. Kenner pressed Isaac's jacket against the wound. It wasn't lethal yet, but it would be soon if they stayed pinned. His voice low, clipped, focused. Tell me where the others are. Isaac met his gaze. There were 12 like us, original carriers, fragments of lives they couldn't erase, so they divided them, made us each hold a piece. And you? I got the guilt. You got the memory. Kenner's stomach turned. That's why I wake up crying, why I can't remember the source. They needed us broken, Isaac said. But believable. That's how the system hides the truth, in pieces. Kenner scanned the walls. One window, no back exit. The sniper would reposition. They couldn't wait. He reached for Isaac's hand. We're not echoes. Not anymore. They moved fast. Kenner pulled Isaac toward the maintenance hatch under the stairs, locked, but not reinforced. He fired his last 2 bullets into the hinges, breaking it. Open. The tunnel inside led into the sewer grid. Smelled like time and rot. But it was escape. They emerged 4 blocks east, under a manhole near the old train yard. Isaac collapsed against a wall, his skin pale, eyes fluttering. Kenner called. An ambulance, but didn't wait. He knew time was now currency, and the next move had to be made before the division cleaned the board. He drove to the city records archive, not the digital division, but the analog vault. Every piece of history too dangerous, too physical, or too forgotten to convert. If Merrin Protocol started in 2003 and there were 12 fragments, then somewhere, someone had the blueprint. He found it in a mislabeled box tagged Urban Planning, Zone Clearance B9. Inside, a VHS tape and a stapled file marked Reintegration Directive, Phase 0. The tape showed 12 children in a concrete room, each facing a black mirror. A voice spoke off camera. "You will not remember this, but you will live it again. You are not real, but your pain must be. The world will know you as ghosts wearing borrowed skin." And then, one by one, the children spoke names. Isaac, Miles, Juliet, Nadia, Marcus. Kenner's own voice, childlike, unsure, said, "I don't want to forget anymore." The file explained it all. Each carrier was seeded with trauma from erased incidents, government black ops, civilian massacres, failed experiments. Their minds repurposed to prevent collapse in truth-sensitive operations. Instead of silencing secrets, they implanted them into living vaults. People, puppets, officers, citizens, scattered in society like landmines of suppressed history. And now, the system was collapsing. One of the carriers, Subject 9, had fractured. They called it event resonance. The trauma had begun to resurface, infecting the others like code bleeding through firewalls. Kenner closed the file. They weren't cleaning up Marin. They were quarantining a leak, and he was part of it. Isaac was in critical care. A nurse handed Kenner a sealed envelope marked, "Hold until memory returns." It wasn't hospital stationery. Inside, a photograph, 12 adults, standing in the rain. Each face vaguely familiar. The caption read, "One memory doesn't hold the truth. It only holds the frame." On the back, an address in Vermont. No explanation. Kenner went that night. The house was isolated, wrapped in mist. Inside, a fireplace, already lit, and in the center of the room, a table with 12 chairs, empty, except for one. A woman sat with her back to him. She didn't turn around. "You came later than expected," she said. "Who are you?" "I'm the archivist. I keep what they tried to burn." Kenner stepped closer. "What is this place?" "A failed reunion," she said. "You were supposed to meet here in 2013, when the memories began leaking, but only 2 ever came." "Who?" "Isaac and Nadia." Kenner sat. The woman slid a folder across the table. It was marked, "End Echo Reset Protocol." Inside, a single page. To end the resonance, the carriers must be acknowledged, not erased, not hunted, named, remembered. She looked at him. "Do you understand now?" Kenner nodded. He wasn't supposed to expose the lie. He was supposed to survive it, so others would see the truth. 3 weeks later, the sniper was found dead in a river. No ID, no face. Isaac disappeared from the hospital the same night. No cameras worked, no records remained, and Detective Miles Kenner? He submitted one final report. Filed under case, 117B attached was the ID card found at the warehouse, and another beside it. His own. No statement, no signature, just a note. "I remember now, and I choose to keep remembering."
I was never supposed to be found.